no secret that Jesus Christ, known in Christian circles as the Son of God, is often depicted as a white man with long, luscious locks. But how did Jesus ever become so widely accepted as being white?
The all-time most reproduced image of white Jesus comes from a certain period, some very many years behind us. It is Warner Salmon's light-eyed, light-haired head of Christ from the 1940s. Salmon, a former commercial artist who created art for advertising campaigns, successfully marketed this picture worldwide. Through Salmon's partnerships with two Christian publishing companies, one Protestant and one Catholic, the head of Christ came to be included on everything from prayer cards to stained glass, faux oil paintings, calendars, hymnals and night lights. Salmon's painting, however, culminates a long tradition of white Europeans creating and disseminating pictures of Christ made in their own image.
I never really got caught up in the kind of dominant whiteness of Christ. I know that there were depictions of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus in places because those were the people who were publishing the materials that we were reading in our local Sunday schools.
Can you just elaborate a bit on that, how we sort of came to have this widely accepted depiction?
I don't know how widely accepted it is. I think it is Westernly accepted. When we read the Bible and the expansion of Christianity, we're actually talking about its Western movement.
Y'all know what he's talking about. That saying, to the victor goes the spoils.
The earliest images of Jesus Christ emerged in the 1st through 3rd centuries AD, amidst concerns about idolatry. They were less about capturing the actual appearance of Christ than about clarifying his role as a ruler or as a savior. To clearly indicate these roles, early Christian artists often relied on syncretism, meaning they combined visual formats from other cultures. Probably the most popular syncretic image is Christ as the Good Shepherd, a beardless, youthful figure based on pagan representations of Orpheus, Hermes and Apollo. However, the first portraits of Christ, in the sense of authoritative likenesses, were believed to be self-portraits, the miraculous image not made by human hands, or acheiropoietos. This belief originated in the 7th century AD, based on a legend that Christ healed King Abgar of Edessa in modern-day Urfa, Turkey, through a miraculous image of his face, now known as the Mandalion. A similar legend adopted by Western Christianity between the 11th and 14th centuries recounts how, before his death by crucifixion, Christ left an impression of his face on the veil of Saint Veronica, an image known as the Volto Santo, or Holy Face. These two images, along with other similar relics, formed the basis of iconic traditions about the true image of the Christ. In this video, we are dutifully taking you way back to the ground, to the foundation of the historic bleaching of the paintings of Jesus, from black to white. Kindly like, share and subscribe to stay down with us. All you have to do is sit back and have a great viewing. This is really going to be interesting. In the Renaissance, European artists began to combine the icon and the portrait, making Christ in their own likeness. This happened for a variety of reasons, all of which doesn't justify the act as noble. The 15th century Sicilian painter Antonello da Messina, for example, painted small pictures of the suffering Christ, formatted exactly like his portraits of regular people, with the subject positioned between a fictive parapet and a plain black background, and signed, "Antonello da Messina painted me." The 16th century German artist Albrecht Dürer blurred the line between the Holy Face and his own image in a famous self-portrait of 1500. In this, he posed frontally like an icon, with his beard and luxuriant shoulder-length hair recalling Christ's. In Europe, however, the image of a light-skinned European Christ began to influence other parts of the world through European trade and colonization. Artists tried to distance Jesus and his parents from their Jewishness. Even seemingly small attributes like pierced ears, earrings were associated with Jewish women. Their removal with a conversion to Christianity could represent a transition toward the Christianity represented by white Jesus. Much later, anti-Semitic forces in Europe, including the Nazis, would attempt to divorce Jesus totally from his Judaism in favor of an Aryan stereotype. As Europeans colonized increasingly farther-flung lands, they brought a European Jesus with them. Jesuit missionaries established painting schools that taught new converts Christian art in a European mode.
Despite the intention of early artists, this white Jesus stuck and was carried on by the popular culture. Even though some countries have their own artistic versions of Jesus, in the United States, this idea of a European-looking Jesus can have dangerous implications. Tabitha L. Jones-Jalvet, a professor of higher education and one of the authors of White Jesus, says that there's been a whitewashing process over time and that white Jesus is a function of white supremacy.
White Jesus is so much more than an icon. It's not neutral. And it's not neutral because it has been proliferated and it's expanded in terms of its presence over centuries. And it has been largely tied to what we call an imperial project, the agenda of a nation state. So when we think about sort of racial apartheid in the United States, which continues, we see that racial apartheid can be sustained using the white supremacist logic that flows from white Jesus. So I see the white savior mythology as serving the interest of white power and white supremacy. And I think that the gospel of Jesus has nothing to do with that.
In colonial Latin America, called New Spain by European colonists, images of a white Jesus reinforced a caste system where white Christian Europeans occupied the top tier, while those with darker skin from perceived intermixing with native populations ranked considerably lower. Artist Nicolas Correa's 1695 painting of St. Rose of Lima, the first Catholic saint born in New Spain, shows her metaphorical marriage to a blonde, light-skinned Christ. Scholar Edward J. Blum and Paul Harvey argue that in the centuries after European colonization of the Americas, the image of a white Christ associated him with the logic of empire and could be used to justify the oppression of Native and African Americans.
The European-looking Jesus, in many ways, was actually used to support the system of white superiority and black inferiority in this nation. Most clergymen during the founding of the colonies, the founding of America and onward, were the ones who were writing about the biblical basis for the inferiority of the black race. And that, in fact, it was a responsibility of the white race to civilize the heathen, to civilize a pagan nation. So a part of that process was employing iconography. It was employing symbols and metaphors and images that could corroborate, that could fund, that could support this particular system of slavery, of colonization, intercolonization here, and eventually of segregation.
In a multiracial but unequal America, there was a disproportionate representation of a white Jesus in the media. It wasn't only Warner Solman's Head of Christ that was depicted widely. A large proportion of actors who have played Jesus on television and film have been white with blue eyes. Pictures of Jesus historically have served many purposes, from symbolically presenting his power to depicting his actual likeness. But representation matters, and viewers need to understand the complicated history of the images of Christ they consume. Writing in 1843 in his collection of 18 essays compiled and entitled as Celebrated Crimes, the great French novelist Alexandre Dumas made a significant claim about modern depictions of Jesus Christ. Dumas claimed that all modern depictions made of the great Jewish prophet and the Christian Son of God stemmed from pictures of one individual. That person, the author of such masterpieces as The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, stated, was one Cesare Borgia, a 15th century Italian cardinal and the son of Pope Alexander VI. There is indeed a striking similarity between Borgia, as he appears in several portraits that have survived him, and the modern image of Jesus. But is this just pure coincidence, or was there some merit to Dumas' claim? Here we examine the Frenchman's hypothesis. The portrait on the left is that of Cesare Borgia, dating to the early 16th century, and on the right is a modern-day stereotypical depiction of Jesus Christ. Don't anybody see any striking resemblance? Not convinced yet? Alright, don't worry, you just take a chill pill. The story you are yet to hear should make you nothing short of a believer. Everyone knows who Jesus Christ was, But who exactly was Cesare Borgia? Though little known to most modern people, Borgia was one of the most infamous political figures of Renaissance Italy. He was born on the 13th of September 1475 at Subiaco near Rome, and was the son of Cardinal Roderick Borgia and his Italian mistress, Vanozza de Catane, and brother to the Black Widow of Rome, Lucretia Borgia. In 1492, the notoriously corrupt Cardinal Roderick Borgia was elevated to the papal tiara and became Pope Alexander III, a position he would hold until his death in 1503. As the head of the Papal States in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, Alexander ruled over a temporal state, one which controlled most of central Italy, including the province of Lazio south towards Naples. Italy was heavily divided at the time between competing city-states such as Florence, Milan, Urbino, Genoa, and Venice. Moreover, this was a time of war, as right around the time of Alexander's accession, Spain and France had become involved here to try to establish their dominance over the peninsula. The Italian wars, which were driven by the two powers, would last for 60 years. To have a glimpse of how disgusting the Borgias were, you are advised to watch the seasonal movie The Borgias. Now, here's the core of the gist. Cesare Borgia was, in fact, the Pope's most loved and illegitimate son. At one time, papacy members were allowed to marry. Pope Alexander VI was known for having multiple mistresses, and in 1476 bore a son named Cesare Borgia. Cesare was Alexander's favoured son, and by the age of 15 had already become the Bishop of Pamplona. By his 18th birthday he was a cardinal. Borgia also had an older brother named Giovanni, who was Captain General of the papacy military forces. Cesare envied his brother's position, and many scholars believe he envied it so much that he had his own brother assassinated in order to obtain the office. Other records show the brothers slept with the same mistress, the wife of their younger brother Goffredo. Many believe the inflamed love triangle between the brothers and their so-called mistresses is what led to young Giovanni's demise. Following Giovanni's assassination, Cesare Borgia resigned his position as cardinal and became Captain General of the papacy military. During this time, the Catholic Church was waging war on Islam, and Cesare was about to play a vital role in the history of the Church. The theory is that people were generally not too enthusiastic about the Catholic Church's regular massacres of Jews and Muslims because the people they were killing looked like Jesus. However, at the time, the Muslims in the dire struggle had successfully made their way to Germany and had taken control of Turkey. This threatened the Church's stronghold over the empire. During the same period, the image of Jesus was similar to that of a Muslim, and the Church was having a hard time selling its ideologies in the region. Pope Alexander VI desperately devised a plan to correct this difficulty. The grand plan was to have every painting of the original Messiah destroyed. The Pope then ordered the destruction of all art depicting a Semitic Jesus, and commissioned a number of paintings depicting a Caucasian Jesus. Some kind of campaign had ensued to ensure that this works. The Pope's son, Cardinal Cesare Borgia, was the model for these paintings. Thus, the nastiest of all the Borgias became the iconic Caucasian Jesus so loved by Christians today. Alexander VI had commissioned Leonardo da Vinci to reinvent Jesus in the image of his own beloved son, Cesare Borgia. This completely disassociated the whites of the empire from the Muslims they had to fight, making it easier to kill their enemies in good conscience. The transformation of the true image of Jesus from black to white here had been purely political motive back then, but the consequence of the act had lingered until today. Between 1502 and 1503, Borgia employed Leonardo da Vinci as a military architect and engineer, in which he and Leonardo da Vinci became intimate instantaneously. They had become lovers. To express his love towards Cesare, however, Leonardo painted many pictures of him. Cesare's father, Rodrigo Borgia, who later became Pope Alexander VI, under the authority of the Catholic Church elite, had his son's picture put up as Jesus Christ in the Western world. It was said that Cesare had sex with his own sister Lucretia, and had also killed his brother Giovanni in 1497. This was the man whom the Catholic Church had given their consent to, allowing his picture to be put up and portrayed as the Christ, to deceive the whole world by getting them to think that Christ was European. All of the images and paintings, some would say most, that are displayed in churches today are those of the mobster Cesare Borgia. In an effort to keep black slaves oppressed so that they could sustain their rulership in Rome, Pope Alexander VI had hired Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo to paint all of the images of the Black Christ in Europe in the said image of Cesare Borgia, his son. Since both these artists were well known during the time called the Renaissance period, a competition had broken out between the two to see who could impress the Pope more by making a new image of the Pope's son that would deceive the world into thinking that Cesare was Jesus. Eventually, Leonardo da Vinci got to win the competition. So the majority of the images displaying the white European-looking Jesus that we see in paintings today at churches and Christian stores is actually a picture of Cesare Borgia, not the Messiah. But Leo and Michelangelo didn't just stop there. They painted all of the people of the Bible to be white, deceiving the entire world of what the people of the book really looked like. Over time, these false images have saturated the minds of the masses to such a degree that the notion of the Messiah being black sounds like a lie. Many people, especially black people, regard the notion of the Messiah and the disciples being black as an attempt to instill black pride in our race, rather than considering if it could be true or not. America has brainwashed us so much that when you try to tell our people the truth, they can't receive it because they have been taught so long to believe in lies. Cesare Borgia is in the book entitled Triptych of Poisoners and is also in the book entitled Cesare Borgia, His Life and Times, by Sarah Bradford. Cesare had successfully expanded the Papal States during his father's papacy and carved out his own principality in central Italy in the Emilia-Romagna area north of Rome towards Bologna. Additionally, as part of an alliance with the French, he was involved in the occupation of Milan and Naples, bringing the Papal States' temporal power in Italy to its highest point. He was rightfully acclaimed for his shrewd diplomacy and military abilities. Indeed, so infamous was Cesare in these respects that he heavily influenced Niccolò Machiavelli when the great Florentine political theorist came to write his satirical guidebook for a ruthless ruler, The Prince, in the early 1510s. The original King James Bible of 1611 had the Apocrypha in it, but in 1928 under the Vatican, they made an agreement to take 14 books out of the King James Holy Bible. Why, you might ask? Well, because thousands of years before they put this image up to be Christ, they found out that it was written about in the Wisdom of Solomon located in the Apocrypha, that they would do this, and the reason for it. So, knowing that this has been prophesied about, the Roman Catholic Church took it out of the Bible so the people wouldn't figure out their deception. It is a noted fact that when they did this, they knew exactly what Christ people really looked like. They knew Christ and his people were not Europeans, but instead were actually Hebrews, who were dark brown people. So, let's find out in the Bible first and foremost what Satan was going to do, and then we will find out what exactly was written in the Wisdom of Solomon, that the Apocrypha had to be taken out and credited as unscriptural and not divinely inspired by the Catholic Church. First, what is written in the Bible that Satan would do? Revelation 12 verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So now we know Satan's plan is to deceive the whole world, which has been going on for quite a long time now. The Bible's words may have been altered to construct in a grand style the deception at work, as many are already aware, but all who are sound at heart can as well evidently perceive that the source of the word of the Holy Book is truth. Everything the Bible said has happened, almost all has come to pass. Now secondly, let's examine what was written in the Apocrypha that was so critical to our knowledge, so that it had to be taken out and defamed as being unbiblical and not divinely inspired. Wisdom of Solomon 14 verse 8. But that which is made with hands is cursed, as well it, as he that made it. He, because he made it, and it, because being corruptible, it was called God. Scripture says that which is made with hands is cursed, but why would it be so? Isaiah 2 verse 8. Their land also is full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands, that which their own fingers have made, because the image that they put up, they called it Christ, which therefore it not being Christ, made it a curse and a sin unto them, because they themselves made it with their own hands and fingers. So therefore by calling it Christ, they give glory unto another, and not the true and living God. Therefore they worship it and give honor to it as being God, which makes it idolatry. What else is written? Wisdom of Solomon 14 verse 9. For the ungodly and his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto God. Wisdom of Solomon 14:10. For that which is made shall be punished together with him that made it. So the image that the Catholic Church allowed to be put up as Christ will be destroyed, and also them and everyone who had a hand in pushing this deception unto the people. So there is a judgment awaiting them. They didn't do this to be nice. They had a motive behind pushing this deception, which was mentally driving them to push a belief into the mindset of the people, in which they were pushing this during the Renaissance period. However, Cesare Borgia's career was to prove short-lived. His power was greatly reduced following his father's death in 1503, and having relocated to Spain, he was killed in an ambush in 1507 in the north of the country at just 31 years of age. Meanwhile, on the side, there is also this unpopular speculative history that the paintings of the white Jesus weren't actually modeled after Cesare Borgia, but they were in fact stealthily modeled after the sister to Cesare, Lucretia Borgia, also an illegitimate child of Pope Alexander VI. Lucretia Borgia, according to history and paintings, was quite a striking and kind-looking woman. There are many horrible things in her history. Her brother Cesare may have killed her brother. Cesare married a woman of France, forcing her to divorce her second husband Alfonso of Aragon, the 17-year-old Duke of Bisceglie and the son of the late King of Naples. This marriage between Cesare and his new bride would destroy a political union between France and Rome. Later it would be known, but not proven, that Cesare once again intervened and changed her life forever. Cesare killed Alfonso for political reasons. She was also forced to give up her and Alfonso's son Rodrigo. Lucretia Borgia went down in history as a nefarious woman with damnable intents. There have been many ideas that she was a murderer who used poison to kill her enemies. None of that was proven, and most of it came from her first husband, who was run off by her father, the Pope. Some say that her father and her had an incestual love affair, which is why he ran her first husband off. This sparked the ex to go around screaming rumors about her and slandering her name. Notwithstanding, her subjects looked at her as a kind leader with a heart of gold. They also saw her as a gentle mother to her family. However, it was said that the only thing that Lucretia Borgia had done in her life that could be viewed as an evil act was against her ego-driven brother, the heinous Cesare Borgia, the very man who killed her beloved brother and her second husband. Lucretia had colluded with Leonardo da Vinci to make herself the image of Jesus, with the explicit idea to get back at her ruthless brother for destroying her family. Leonardo da Vinci went right along with this plan because he worked for Cesare and knew just how ungodly the man truly was. And take a look at these pictures and tell me just what you see. These pictures are just to give you an idea. Now let us go even further. When you look at Lucretia, Cesare, and da Vinci's painting, the head of Christ, you will see exactly what is and what is not. Why shouldn't Leonardo da Vinci make her Jesus Christ in his pictures? It isn't like da Vinci didn't know about Cesare's horrible plans. Everyone knew about him murdering her husband despite the protective services of the Vatican. Everyone knew that Cesare had killed their brother to ensure his status in the family and in rank. Lucretia had to get back at her brother by the only way she could: crush his ego. Destroy the one thing that makes him tick. The only thing that he truly loves. And this, Lucretia had achieved by colluding with da Vinci. Going forward, it's been long observed by historians that European royalty has always had vested interest in the divine ruler of the cosmos looking like them. They didn't wait until the late 15th century to have adopted Cesare Borgia's deceptive plot. There is clear and completely unequivocal evidence that Jesus Christ was already being depicted in this way for centuries prior to Borgia's life and the appearance of portraits of the Italian politician. Such images of the bearded modern-day Jesus can be found from all over Europe. Now let us take you on a tour of white Jesus prior to the Borgia ascension in the 1490s. This was said to be a decade before Cesare Borgia was born. This was the historic flight into Egypt by Cosmetura, early 1470s. The painter of this white Jesus, by name Antonello da Messina, had died by the time in history when Cesare would have been 3 or 4 years old. Now, on to the next. This is another white Jesus with darker-skinned thieves being crucified on either side. painted by Pietro Lorenzetti in the 1340s, long before Cesare Borgia was born. This one was named The Man of Sorrows by the painter Michele Giambono within the years 1420 to 1430. This right here is another one still by Pietro Lorenzetti within the years 1310 to 1329. Another good example to illustrate the point in hand, however, is this painting from the Catacomb of Comodilla on the Via Ostiensis in Rome. Here there is a mural containing an image of a bearded Jesus, which is believed to be one of the earliest examples of the modern-day stereotypical image of the prophet. It dates to sometime in the 4th century and so predates Borgia's life by about 1,100 years. This is the depiction of Jesus Christ from the Ravenna mosaics, c. 526 at the left, and at the right is a mural painting of Jesus Christ from the Catacomb of Comodilla in Rome, dating to the 4th century. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site today and contains a famous series of mosaics depicting biblical scenes, early Christian figures, and contemporary political figures, including the Emperor Justinian and his wife Theodora. The moral of the story is: the Borgias did not invent white Jesus, as some are made to believe. They merely reinvented and used white Jesus for their own ends. As a matter of fact, there are dozens of other examples from throughout the Middle Ages. More paintings than one can count, of white Christ, prior to the time of Cesare Borgia, countless numbers of them. And it gets worse if you look at the cult of Mary that arose in the Middle Ages, because women have always borne the brunt of colorism. The point buttressed is, the image of Christ as a beardy whitish dude was already very much in place in Italian art of the medieval period and late 15th century. What's more, it had been in place for a really long time via the myth of the image of Edessa and the rise of the Church of Constantinople. In iconography it's called the Christ Pantocrator, Christ the ruler of all, and it's as old as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the iconoclastic disputes that tore the Eastern Orthodox Church apart in the 8th and 9th centuries. That's a solid 600 years before Cesare Borgia was around to model for Jesus's face. And actually, the painting of Christ the Pantocrator does remarkably resemble portraits of Cesare, and that was no accident. Cesare styled himself that way in order to appeal to the image of Pantocrator and Salvator Mundi that was already firmly entrenched in the Catholic imagery of the time. The Borgias were taking advantage of it, not inventing it. In closing, for centuries, Christianity's image of Jesus strayed far from his historical reality. From artistic choices to cultural biases, Jesus morphed from a man of the Middle East into a European figure. Into a lie. This artistic choice, fueled by European cultural dominance and unconscious bias, created a disconnect between reality and perception. This whitewashing wasn't accidental. It stemmed from a desire to make Jesus relatable to predominantly white audiences, and of course, reinforce racial hierarchies. Reclaiming a more accurate image of Jesus, one that reflects his heritage, is a vital step towards a more inclusive and authentic faith. That brings us to the end of yet another interesting video segment. Did you learn a thing or two? Reach out to us in the comment section below and share your thoughts. We are always delighted to pick from them. Also, support our works by hitting that like button in front of you. Share with your families and friends to keep spreading our eye-opening black narrative, and subscribe to keep getting notified for more. We are glad to have you in this journey with us. Thank you for watching.